Well, here we are at the third of the series in the new year, the new you. Remember, the first one was God knew you would fail. The second one was God wants you to be successful. And this one is God has given you incredible potential. Now, go get your Bible, get some paper and pen, get ready to take some notes, and I'll wait on you. Go ahead. All right. Now we're back together. We're ready to go. And we're going to talk about how God has given you incredible potential. Now, this is an interesting word, potential. Let's discuss it first. Potential means capable of being, but not yet in existence, even though necessary conditions already exist. What does that mean? If they already exist, what does that mean? Now, all of the abilities, talents, longings, and desires you have for dreams you have for some greatness have been given to you by God. God has created that for you. And you alone, you're unique in your situation. And so the potential is there. Plus, He has even designed all the laws so that they are set and ready for you to be able to use. If you're going to use set laws and you use those set laws wrongly, who's surprised that you have a problem with that? The key is then to learn what are the set laws that God has designed and then turn around and use them wisely. People who are successful in this world, and I'm not talking about people who do it illegally or step on other people to accomplish it, but people who are successful in this world are successful because they understood the laws and they're following them even if they don't care about God. Okay? Proverbs is a great book for that. The book of Proverbs is the go-to book for how to act in this world and how to think. And it doesn't have anything to do with the gospel in there necessarily, but it does with how to think and how to respond to what happens in the everyday world. Now, there are some great things we're going to talk about today because the key is God has set the laws for mankind. Now, understand that. He did not set the laws for a certain color of person or for a certain height of a person or for a gender, although He has set specific laws for roles and responsibilities for each gender. But the laws are set for all of mankind. Now, let's think about that, man. It'd be like you came to a house and you look and here's the house is made. So you go in this house and you look at this room and you say, obviously, this is a living room. This is a kitchen. This is a bathroom. Okay, this is a bedroom. You can tell by the way it's designed that that's what it's for. And the set laws are the things like where the doors are, the windows, the fact that doors have locks on them so you can decide who's in there and who isn't. The fact that you can't move from one room to another without going through the doors. These are how the laws are set for us in the life of mankind. And now that's very important because if you see someone out there who has done something and they have done something well, it means that potential is there for you too. Remember what potential meant? Capable of being, but not in not in existence, even though necessary conditions already exist. So the conditions for you to do or be or whatever anyone else has done and or been is there. So let's take a look at what this is all about. Number one, those who follow the laws will prosper. Listen to this in Deuteronomy 30. I love this particular chapter and on 30. But here's what he says in this. He says, let me tell you something. Sorry, I added this. He says in verse 11, now what I'm commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. Did you hear that? It's not too difficult, and it's not something you can't do. section. God created you with incredible potential. What I want you to do is turn over to Matthew 7, and in Matthew 7, 7 through 12, and in this particular situation, God tells us how to respond to what He has given you. Why it's important that you have the potential you have, and that you have the gifts that He has given you, specifically already given you, that are sitting there waiting for you to use. Okay, here they are. Okay, now in verse 12. No, what did I say? 7 through 12. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, the door will be open. Now, he goes on to say it so clearly and so simply. Ask. That means you ask yourself, you ask others, and you ask God, what is my purpose? Now, we're not talking about that everybody does have a purpose to worship their God. And that's simple. And there's ways of salvation. There's no other ways, and that's simple. That's set. But you, for your own life, how is it that your future, what is it that your success would be in? And let me tell you, it's going to be in the areas that you're talented or you have abilities in. And God has designed those so that you would enjoy that process. Now, for me, I love teaching. I didn't realize, and writing, I didn't realize how much I enjoy that. Now, I am also capable of art. I know many people who have seen me draw on a board in one of my classes has say, you aren't capable of art at all. However, I've known from an early age that I am, but I'm not as interested in that as I am in teaching. I don't get as much pleasure from that as I do from what I do. How I could have developed that too, and I just chose not to. Okay? And so those things that are there in me are there for me to develop or not, and to use or not in my ability to succeed in life. I do use my art whenever I'm thinking about how I'm going to design this or that, or maybe my marketing and so on and so forth. So it's different. But I'm not going to sit down and paint a picture or draw something and find the pleasure in that other people do, because that really moves them, and they have the ability to do other things that they're going to turn off. And you're going to decide for yourself, and here's how you do it. You ask yourself, what are my abilities and my talents and what are my desires? What is my dream? And you can ask other people because they know you and they've seen you. Well, you're good at this or you're good at that, And you ask God by praying to Him and so on. And He can then enlighten you. Now notice He also says seek. This means you're going to have to dig it out. You know the story about the diamond mines over in Africa, and the guy had the property, and he had heard about diamonds, and all he had was a bunch of rocks, and he couldn't even grow anything because the rocks were all in the way. And so he decided to go out and seek for diamonds, and he sold his property, and he sold it to a guy who knew that what he had was the rocks on his property was a bunch of diamonds. And so he lost out, this owner did, because he didn't know what he was looking for to begin with. So that's why you ask yourself about your abilities, talents, and what you long for, what your desire is. And then you seek to find it. And when you dig or you mine, it requires hard work, and it's going to take time before you do it. It's going to take time before you accomplish it. If you're not willing to put in the time, you're not worthy of the results. Okay? So he goes on to say in verse 9 of this same chapter 7, Matthew, which of you, if his son asked for bread, would give him a stone? Or if he asked for a fish, would give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for it sums up the law of the prophets. Now here's what it's saying. Don't you know that I'll help you accomplish what you want? However, God never does for you what you can do for yourself. So he's not going to miraculously give you something you don't deserve because you haven't worked for. I was talking with a lady the other day, and she said, "Oh, I always wanted to have a prince on a white horse just show up and take me away." And I asked her, I said, "Well, are you worthy of such a prince? Have you worked on yourself enough to make a prince care to get on a horse and come over and get you? See, if not, why are you asking for a prince?" This is the same thing. Okay? And then he says, not only to, in verse 7 there, ask, seek, and then knock. Knock means you look for the open doors, because God's going to help you find those areas. And here's the problem. A door may open and it doesn't look right because it's going to require too much work. There's a story about the people who were I'm thinking it's World War II. I can't remember. And they were given options of how to die. And they went down this corridor. And in this corridor, in each door in the corridor had a sign that said how they would die. Death by hanging, death by firing squad, death by poison. And one of them said the unknown death. And rarely did anybody choose that one, because they all wanted to know how they were going to die. But the unknown death led to the outside world, and they would have been free, and they would have died sometime later in an unknown fashion. Don't be afraid to look in the doors. Don't choose a death that is known in society today because you're afraid to do it and to work hard to accomplish it. If you believe you can accomplish it, you're going to accomplish it. You'll find the ways to do it. It will become open to you because you're already starting to look for it. And other people will help you because they know that's what you're wanting. And they automatically do it because that's the way people are. Now, God expects you to use His gifts. Let's go through it. The talents. There's a story in Matthew 25, 24 through 30 about some men who have been given talents by the master. A talent was supposedly a certain amount of wages or whatever. But they were given these talents, and each one was given 5, one was given 2, one was given 1. The one who was given one, you know the story, buried his and waited around until the master came to see what he'd done with it. The man who had 5, he had used it to increase, and he had doubled it. The one who had 2 had doubled his. The one who had 1 buried it, and he had done nothing with it. He digs it up and he gives it to him, and God said, let me tell you something, buddy. Your talent was there for you to use, and yet you did not do that, and so I'm taking it from you. And the others who did use their talent were rewarded with even more, not just the double that they had gotten. Now that's very important to see. God expects you to use your talents and your gifts that He has given you, and in so doing you're rewarded with more. Listen, if you wonder, should there be rich people when there are poor people? Yes. And let me tell you why. The wind blows a lot colder for a poor person than it does a rich person. And you have a responsibility to yourself and to your family to make sure they are well cared for. And second, you have a responsibility to the desires of God for you to care for the sick and the widows and orphans and the needy and so on and so forth. How can you do that if you don't have any money either? Very important for us to see that. You're to use your talents to better yourself. That's what they're there for. That's why God gave them to you. And better yourself in all areas, not just money. Now, minus. This particular story is in Luke 19:11 through 27. This sounds a lot like talents, except at the end of this story, it's the same thing, the different amounts and so on. At the end of this story, those who were successful were awarded cities to be over, meaning they were awarded high responsibilities so that they could accomplish more in those areas. So notice that if it's not the things that we're after, but to accomplish in order to be able to do more. Because when you get to what you want to say is a success over a certain area, then you see beyond and you're wanting to do more. It's like climbing a mountain. The higher you get, the more you see. And the easier it is to understand what was below you. And so as you climb the mountain, you have more and more and more of a view. He's never finished with it. And what does God expect you to use His gifts? What about your future? Number 3. As of yet, that is unknown. And the reason it's unknown is because the potential is there in you, but no one knows what it is yet and what you will do with it, because you're the one in charge of that. Listen to this in Micah 6 and verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. Here's what He demands of you. Be what you can be under the laws of God. And honor Him with that service. How many of us will get to heaven and God said, you know, I know you were having a tough time, but I had designed it this way and you chose that way. Well, there's a lesson, and it's incredible that God has given you incredible potential, more than you or I could imagine if we were sitting and talking about you. Have a good day. We'll see you next time when we talk about God expects you to be great.